Battering miniguns, massive cleavers, and a weapon designed to make Oppenheimer look like a paragon of peace. Today we delve into the massive, heavy weapons in the world of Gears of War. This is part 3 of 3 on a mini-series I've done into the weapons of Sarah. Watch the past videos for a breakdown on the more basic and semi-wacky weapons on Sarah, but continue forward after that as we drive deep and dirty into the heavy arms of the Cog, Locust, and even the Swarm. As I've said before, not an expert, just a nerd. If there's anything I'm getting wrong, please let me know in the comments below. I do actually enjoy learning some things, and it's great when people who know what they're talking about get a chance to inform me on the world. Now, as for heavy weapons, outside of the Troika turret, all of these had been added in Gears of War 2 and later, since none but the static turret existed in the first game. But the first that we see in the flesh, the mortar, is a beast of its own class, one of the most satisfying sounds in the whole series. A massive shell launching as far as 150 meters away, detonating in the air and blanketing the path of the shell with smaller bomblets that ravage all of anything that gets in the way. Even massive beasts like Brumoks and Reavers are no match to the whistling devastation of a single mortar barrage, sundering all foes caught in the blast. Mortars are not too hard to get wrong, and Gears does a fantastic job at making a simple yet effective weapon feel even meatier. Every clunk of the weapon as it ticks up, preparing to turn anything downrange into fresh pasta. The screech in the air as the shell reaches its vertical climax, and the earth-shattering crash of bombs landing into the ground and shaking any of those lucky enough to be in cover. Whether used for devastating firepower or simple area control, suppressing those in the user's sights, the mortar excels in each and every category a heavy, bulking weapon ever could. The classic coalition style of make a big fuck-off weapon that commits war crimes as easily as Prescott breathes, the mortar is my favorite heavy weapon, if not weapon in general, across the series. Just by sound alone. Let's take a sweet, nice listen one more time. Next, we have a line of weapons all derivative from one another. Starting from the oldest brother, we have what the Cog calls a chain gun. Less accurate, as the actual weapon we see being used is a rotating Gatling gun, but that's the name nonetheless. Based on the M61 Vulcan, the chain gun is a massive, mounted spitter of death. Less powerful but more accurate to the Locust Troika variant, which itself was a dual-barreled cousin of the chain gun, ripped apart and used by the Horde in defensive positions. But a simple and effective death machine that pays tribute to the biggest United States exports to the world several times over. And its smaller brother, the Vulcan, which, if the name isn't giving it away, is even more reminiscent of the M61 in name, but taking the sound cues from the Avenger. A dual operating system requiring 2 men to carry this beast, one taking the gun itself and shouldering an immense amount of firepower that shouldn't even be possible to tank the recoil of, even for a gear, and a secondary ammunition container connected by a belt, the latter feeding ammo continuously into the main Vulcan Gatling gun for sustained suppressive fire. While immensely powerful and no doubt capable of providing a similar amount of firepower as the chain gun or Troika in a man-sized package, the biggest drawback of the Vulcan minigun is its dependency on 2 men to operate, even for the output of damage that it does. Raining brass at speeds regular weapons just can't hope to match. But an answer to that question lies in the Mulcher. The even smaller, relatively, brother of the Vulcan and the chain gun, the Mulcher is a self-contained Gatling minigun that holds its own ammunition within the chassis of the gun itself, making it usable by a single operator at expense to the gun's overall weight and fire rate by comparison. But even when merged all together and crammed into a single gun, the Mulcher acts as it sounds. Like many weapons on this list, as it chews through anything being pelted by 1,200 rounds per minute. A single hand crank gets the internal mechanism going rather than the expensive electronics of the chain gun, and a smaller caliber of munitions on par with the standard Mark II Lancer means that the Mulcher can hold just a bit more ammo to be spit out later after all of the trade-offs with the Vulcan's design. But despite being the weakest and slowest of the three, the Mulcher still brings punch to action as it chews right through anything in its way, even larger locusts like the Boomers and later on the Scions. In the new age of the COG, the Mulcher has been stepped to the side for a new variant of the chain gun, a smaller, self-contained tri-barrel murder machine known as the Tri-Shot. Very original. A rotary chain gun somehow firing off of a belt feed through all three barrels at once, providing maximum firepower over longer distances but a much quicker time to overheat. Meaning where the Mulcher is best at sustained fire, the Tri-Shot is best utilized with multiple short bursts cleaving through your enemies. Most often seen on the side of Guardian and Sentinel DBs, along with the DR-1 mechs. The second DB heavy arms used by the DR-1s and Sentinels is the explosive salvo launcher. While it looks like an M202, the RL salvo is meant surprisingly enough for more carpeting or suppressive runs, firing each of the weapon's 20 rocket capacity in a wild spiral motion on the way to targets. One after another, this automatic launcher is great for taking on swaths of smaller enemies and infantry rather than targeting heavy arms or armored targets. But with the speed of firing and damage per shot, the RL salvo does offer the most damage per second within the confines of the games. How you'd have to fit 20 rockets that have an explosive payload on par with the boomshot inside this weapon? I'm not sure. But in classic Gears fashion, maybe a little bit of Bethesda in there, it just works. Variants of guns pop up all across Serra. The COG was seemingly fond of making the same style of weapon at different power levels. We see this with the chain gun, Vulcan, and Mulcher, but also the one-shot. As the name implies, this lever-action heavy sniper rifle takes down just about anything that has the unfortunate luck to end up in the scope's grasp into red mist. Firing a massive 20mm bullet through the most competent laser targeting system the COG has made for infantry weapons, this long shot on steroids is a functional overkill. With an 8-round internal magazine manually cycled with a lever, the one-shot's greatest fall-through is the long cycle time between rounds, but made up for by the undeniable power in a single pull of the trigger. And like most guns and gears, all that power is backed up by one thunderous shockwave ripping through the battlefield. Where the Scorcher brings fire and flames galore, the cryo cannon is its reversal. A gaseous form of what is likely to be liquid nitrogen, the cryo cannon is a device that, much like the drop shot or the buzzkill, served a more practical purpose before being used as a weapon in Mount Kadar. What that practical use might have been, I'm not quite sure, making ice sculptures as far as I know. It's a neat concept that adds flair to the world and the machinations of Dr. Niles, but does nothing more than that. It is fun to use and freeze, but regardless, does as all Gears power weapons do, kills in a unique and gimmicky fashion. Also take note that the cryo cannon, in the reversal of the other guns that overheat and need to be cooled down, it gets too cold and has to be warmed up with these flame jets that come out of absolutely fuck-butt nowhere. The two weapons on this list that aren't ranged in any way, we come onto the cleaver, used by the Locust Horde. Not much to be said for this, beyond the fact that it's just a big fuck-off blade that's sharp enough to cut rockworms, creatures so tough that small arms fire doesn't affect them. Now the second and more interesting weapon used in melee combat is that of the Breaker Mace. Yes, I know we're missing Rom's knife and the Mauler flails and the boom shield, but I'll have to save those for later. Regardless, the Swarm Breaker Mace, a rotating series of discs with locust crystals embedded in each layer to deal devastating damage on anyone close enough to be swatted away. Also capable of taking damage for the user as a sort of pseudo-shield before breaking it back apart into a pile of scraps on the floor. But beyond a small footnote for the list of heavy weapons, we have the Force of Destruction you have all been waiting for. The call of the skies that splits the heavens in two and turns the soil below into the anvil that a hammer strikes upon. When the dusk is on the horizon, you call unto the Hammer of Dawn.
Good job, Gears!
And now we go to do it all over again. Another pointless battle. Another bereaved family. Another year of war. And the UIR does exactly the same. Someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to create weapons so powerful that if politicians want to wage war, they'll face the same death as the men and women sent to fight it. A deterrent. A damn big deterrent. I can build a deterrent that'll bring governments to their senses. An orbital weapon system. That's my duty now.
While originally a design from the Union of Independent Republics, who had gotten as far as to develop targeting satellites and beacons for the device, the Hammer of Dawn is a powerful beam of energy that can strike anywhere at any time. Impossible to defend against and ever difficult to predict, the hammer was an idea that both the COG in Adam Phoenix and the UIR in Morris Ivo came up with around the same time. Knowing that the UIR were developing an orbital weapon, the COG set forth Operation Leveler. An assault on Aspho Fields was set. COG commandos and soldiers assaulted the base for their prize, the UIR plans for the Hammer of Dawn prototype. With plans in hand, the lead scientists on the project being executed, and their knowledge dying with them, the COG had what they needed. 2 years of R&D between Adam Phoenix and his colleague, Neville Istrom, who both sought to end this war and all wars for the future, led to the completion of the Hammer orbital system. Tests on a remote island passed first. Then was the Battle of Bonberg, where the COG forces were held down and had pressure applied by a fleet of UIR warships, until the sky cracked open, beginning to cry a golden stream of pure power. The Hammer of Dawn was called onto the scene. In a matter of minutes, seconds, 4 warships of the UIR were cleaved into multiple pieces and relegated to the sea floor. The UIR were put on the back foot, and their leader, Premier Yuri Dashenko, met the COG at the negotiation table. Unfortunately, the Council of Groznia and other members of the UIR fought to keep their pride. Even some rebels, led by Major Garen Paddock, took on the finished but not yet deployed Hammer satellites in Vazgar, but were unsuccessful in their wishes to prolong the war and avoid a surrender to the COG. But with millions already dead and the Hammer of Dawn in the hands of the COG, the Union of Independent Republics chose a peaceful ceasefire rather than the self-assured destruction under the beams of the hammer. Ironically, just a year after Emergence Day, into the Locust Wars and during the battle for Ephira, Chairman Prescott pulled his grand murder card, announcing to the world that the surface of Sarah would be scorched by the Hammer of Dawn so they could deny military victories from the Locust Horde. 3 days is all that was given. After the time elapsed, over 90% of Sarah's landmass was struck by the hammer, coming down like a series of forgeries on the surface of an anvil. Millions were dead. Billions upon that. Human and locust alike. The beam striking as true as it was made for, turning those of the world into shadows of the ash left behind by the crying sunrise left in Prescott's brutal strategy. The Hammer of Dawn, humanity's last bastion and their greatest sacrifice, all in one. Out of all the COG's weapons and even other devices made on Sarah, the Hammer of Dawn is by far the most destructive, the most powerful, and the most influential on the modern landscape of the planet. This was not a rifle, not a missile launcher, not an atomic bomb, but a chisel that cuts right into the surface of the world itself, liquefying concrete and cleaving through the most well-defended military bases. The weapon to end all wars and to raise the surface of Sarah. Thank you for coming with me on this journey through the guns of Gears. It seemed perfect to end here on the Hammer of Dawn, the greatest achievement and regret of Adam Phoenix, the gear who just didn't have enough time. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, let me know what you thought if you enjoyed this. Subscribe, please, if you feel like it. This is it for guns for now. Maybe we will go into stuff later, such as the light mass missiles, or as mentioned, Rom's awesome-ass knife or Scourge's chainsaw staff. But for now, this is it. Thank you very much for watching. Have fun, stay cool, and be awesome. I'll see you next time.